Okay, good morning, Cyber Warriors. Now, today we're going to cover a couple of different ways to get all of the added programs to your system. As per always with Windows, there's more than one way to peel the potato. I'm going to show you 3 ways to do it, but only 2 of them work out of the box. Let's get right to it. Okay, so getting started, we have our administrator PowerShell window up, and we're going to dive right on in with Get-WmiObject, specifically looking at the Win32 product class. So, get WMI tabbed autocomplete, and this you have to actually type Win32 underscore product. Okay, boom. There's a bunch of information here. So a couple things we're going to want to do with this information is, one, format it so that we can see it all on one basic table, and then also we want to take a look and sort by the install date. I understand install date is not there in the default view, but that information is there. Let's actually just take a look at what all is available. We're going to do that by running the command again. I'm going to pipe it to select first one, and we're going to look at everything. Oh my goodness, there's a whole lot of stuff in here. So we have name, version, it's a lot of everything. So important things we want to take a look at is the install date, the install source. We also want to collect the install location. We're not going to do much with that, but it does help in the long run. So let's dive straight on in and do that again. And we're going to select certain name fields. So caption. So caption is the same as display name for a lot of other things we see it in as. So let's take a look at the caption. We want version, install date, install source, install. Now let's just leave it at that for right now. We're going to pipe this to sort, and we're going to change the default order from descending, and we're going to sort that on the install date. All right. There we go. Simple, easy. It allows us to see these things when they were installed and also where they were installed from. Where it's installed from is useful, especially when you're trying to do some forensics and find out if a user had installed something out of their download directory or something within their own folder structure, which can be bad, especially when it's a user doing these things as opposed to administrator. It's just not good practice to execute stuff directly out of downloads. I know everyone does it because we're lazy by nature, but there you have it. Anyway, so this is a really fast way, or reasonably fast way, to identify what is installed on your system. However, there's a problem with this, and you don't want to do it. The reason why you don't want to do it is because whenever you call the WMI object for the Win32 product, what happens is it will try to go in and collect information to make sure that all of those programs are installed properly. So if there's a problem with one of those, if there is like a restore function or a reset or recovery, like if one of the installations gets corrupted, what can happen is it can change the state of your system to include even uninstalling one of the programs and reinstalling behind you, which can cause problems. Instead, you want to use this call right here. So it's Get-WMI Object. Wow. Class, because reasons, and then Win32 reg underscore add remove programs. You're like, Kilt Guy, why didn't you do this to begin with? Well, there's a reason for that. Unfortunately, this is not a basic or default Windows class. This is a class that only exists if you have installed an SMS server or SCCM server client on the system, where third-party applications are managed through that. There is a way to add these capabilities and this information into the registry, but there really is no reason to do that in order to get this kind of functionality, and that is to go directly into the registry. Yes, I get it. You're preaching to the choir. You're like, Kilt Guy, you shouldn't be going in the registry to do this stuff. And you're right. Generally, you're right. But in this case, we need to go into the registry to pull out this information so that we can get all of these bits of information we have up here available to us without potentially eliminating or changing forensic information. So how do we do that? Well, let's get right into that now. All right, so for this section, what we're going to want to do is actually bring up the PowerShell ISE editor. And this is just so that we can write this bit of code and see the programming structure the way that it needs to be. And it helps us be able to visualize some of these things, and it will help guide along a lot of those things. I know that I've used Notepad++ in the past, but I think in this instance, let's just go ahead and use the ISE. And we want to start that with administrative rights. And since we already have administrative PowerShell, we can just pull it straight up by using the start process command. So start process PowerShell _ISE. Oh. Yay! And it looks almost exactly the same as we had before, except we can open up this scripting pane. And this is where we're going to actually write the code up on top so that we can get all of the different things that we need to see. And there's a ton of stuff that we're going to want to do. And one of the first things we have to do is actually create a variable, which is actually an instance of the registry that lives inside a variable, so that we can actually pull that information. And to do that, we would have to go ahead and create it. And this is basically where we're going to go into calling specific types of information, or we're defining it specifically for it, right? So we want registry key. All right, so this is an actual thing that you can do. You define it and what this is going to be, and we have to tell it where all of this is at. So OpenRemoteBaseKey. Okay, and it already puts in the little special characters for us, which is fine and fantastic. And we are going to do this because we want the HKey local machine, so the HKLM. So this would be HKLM, right? HKLM? No, actually it wouldn't. We have to actually call it local machine. Now, it needs a bit of other information. It needs to know where this machine is or who this machine is. And we're telling it the OpenRemoteBaseKey, which allows us to adapt that script or this element of the script to actually call the registry of a remote system that we have, that we may be owners of, whether we're a domain admin or our local administrator account is across another system on the network. And it will allow us to be able to do that, which is very handy when you're an administrator. However, in this instance, we want to make sure that we're defining our system right here. And to do that, we need to call up, do you remember what this is? Those of you who have been paying attention to some of my previous videos know that this is an environmental variable that we have to call specifically, right? So we're going to separate it with a comma, and env for environmental, right? And we want this one, computer name, because we're defining it as our computer name. And we're closing that out. Okay? That's it. That will go in, create a copy of all of the registry settings under HKey LocalMachine, and define that stuff for us. Now, the next thing we need to do is look at the uninstall registry key, which is where all of that information is going to exist. To do that, we're just actually going to define it in a variables that we can call later. Still recovering from that illness. All right, so uninstall key is going to be, we will need to put this into, take a break, no. And let's reset that briefly. All right, so now we're going to want to define our all right, here we go with uninstall key. Uninstall key. And this is, so this bit is going to be a bit interesting. So software, and we're putting double slashes in here. And Windows, and then current version, uninstall. And there we go. So this looks unusual, and I know that if we're going to be looking at normally, what we're going to do is change directory to HKLM. So CD, software, Microsoft, Windows, current version, and uninstall. You notice that there's just a single slash with all of those, but we created our variable with multiple slashes. And while I'm in here, let's actually clear the screen and take a look at what's in here. So there's a bunch of stuff. Let's scroll to the top. We have name and the properties. In some of the properties, we have the display name and display version. You notice that it's called differently. So it's display here as opposed to name or caption and version. So we're going to actually call these informations by the way that they are set up here, but we're actually going to pull in that in a manner that matches the original calls that we did. And the reason for that is so that it looks familiar, because and it also saves a little space because we're not adding the word display into the whole mix, which is completely unnecessary. Excuse me. Still getting over that cold. All right, so let's go back to PowerShell. Haha. All right. So next thing we need to do is we need to tell it how to drill down inside there to get some of those subkeys inside there, and then the information that we get from that. Right. All right, let's go ahead and play this, and we can show our variable for uninstall key, and boom, has the information. Alrighty then. So now we're going to drill down to a little bit and take a look at the reg key information. And this is going to be reg, and we need to do OpenSubKey, and that is going to be our uninstall key. All right. So let's take a look at this. So let's run that. Boom. And let's take a look at regkey. Still nothing there. So what we need to do is actually dive further into it. So we're going to take a look at subkeys, and this is going to be reg key get subkey names, and we just don't want one. We're going to get all of them, so that's what that will do. Let's take a look. Nada. Maybe I'm screwing this all up and I just don't know it. We'll find out. I may have to redo all this video. Okay. So the next bit we're going to wind up doing is creating an array. And this array is going to be all of our installed programs. And this is an array, and that's how you define a basic array. We've already been down that particular road. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run a for each loop. We're going to collect all the information that's down inside all of that stuff. All right, so for each key in, and this is going to be subkeys. There it is. And we want it to do a thing. All right, so we're going to define this key is the uninstall key, and then we need to add our double slash, and then we need to add key. Okay, so what this has done is it's taken that uninstall key and it's adding the individual key name into that, so you'll be able to pull it specifically. Now we're going to go further. This subkey camel case all the things, and this is reg dot the OpenSubKey. There we go. And we're going to call this key, not to be confused with whiskey. And we're going to create new objects so that we can actually define them as we're pulling them into the array. So object equal new object, and this is a PS object. All right, so now we need to add things into the object key, right? So object, and we're going to add member and member type, and this is going to be note property. Notice I'm auto tabbing a lot. Name, yes. And this is one of the reasons why we're in ISE, because it helps us with all of these things. All right, so this is going to be where we're going to have the departure, right? So we're going to call this caption because that is the display name in the other field. But what we need to do is actually have it call a property that we have that is get value. It's a method. It's not a property. It's the get value method to pull that piece of information, and we're going to get the display name in this instance, right? So this is going to be here, and then we have once again and this is this subkey. And then get value display name. Okay. And then we need to close that out. So you notice that it had a helpful hint, which wasn't helpful because we didn't use it. This is an unfortunate side effect of the way we're doing this particular portion. So it can't like know everything when we're doing things, but this will work. All right, so we're going to do a bunch of copy and paste because I don't like typing all this much and my voice is already going out. So we're going to do, next one is version. And we have, this is actually display version. Remember, this is different in the command that we're looking at. And now we're going to look at install date. All right. And then we need to look at install location, because that is next alphabetically, and I like doing things that make sense. And then source this time for the install source. All right, and then let's just do publisher, just because. That is handy from time to time when you're doing research on a system. And that was information we had available. As you'll notice, there we go, publisher. Helps us rule out a few things sometimes. Sometimes not so much. All right, back in. Okay, so publisher. All right, so now that we have that, we need to add those to our array, right? Installed programs. Did I spell that right? Just for giggles, I'm going to copy and paste because I don't trust myself. And plus equal object. All right. And then we need to close that out. And you notice that it finishes our for each loop. All right. Now, next step we're going to want to do is call it. Oop. And when we call it, it's going to be that. And where object. And this is going to be trying to look at my notes here. Sorry. Yeah, I thought so. And, oops. And this is underscore dots, and this is going to be caption. Select object. So what we're going to do is in the array where the thing is specifically with the name, we want to select all of the different fields that we want to look at. And these are the same things that we did as part of our other thing when we're looking at the Win32 objects, right? Or Win32 product. All right, so now we want select object is going to be the caption, version, install date, install source, and I'm just going to pipe that to sort object, I'm going to change the order from normal to descending, and we want this to be based off of the install date, and we're going to pipe that to format table, and we're going to tell it to auto size. Okay. Now, this should all work. Should. Let's save it. Call it install programs. There it is, and we're going to run it. And it all worked. Whew, magic. So you see that this output is very similar to, oh, I removed it, didn't I? Let's take a look here. So here we have that, and we have that. They're very, very similar. But this is a much better way to pull that stuff out and down. And I'll show you that this way actually includes more information than the other way. Because look, we have the Oracle VirtualBox, because I'm on a virtual system, and it's not there. So that other way is good. It has problems, has issues where it can start trying to restore programs that it's not supposed to. This one is more complete. And it doesn't trigger any kind of file validation or program validation function within Windows, which would cause it to just make mistakes. So let's take a look at that code again. All right, so here we go again, right? So we're defining our registry key. We're defining our uninstall location, or where we're going to do this thing. And you see that variable allows us to change things if we want to. So maybe we're going to take some of these ideas, and instead of looking at the HKLM LocalMachine, maybe we want to look at the local user, or maybe all users. There's a lot of different ways we can adapt this, but by keeping it as a variable, we can go through and make changes and do different things, right? So each one of these different levels here is we're going in and we're getting additional information. We're diving into this to get additional pieces of information. We're defining an array right here, and we're doing a for loop, creating new objects, and we're adding new objects or new information. And we're changing it from the default name to a name we specify in order to have continuity between those different things. And we can even call this name, but if we do call it name, we'll want to change it here and here as well. Otherwise, you're gonna have blank zones or nothing. If you forget to change this one, you get a whole lot of blank screen and nothing. So make sure that if you're changing or adapting things up here, up above, that you're finding all of the different iterations elsewhere. One of the reasons why I like Notepad++, if you double click that, it'll highlight all of the different areas where that same name or word exists. But again, to recap, we're adding stuff to the object variable, and that object variable gets put into the array for each one of the individual subkeys that are defined as we go through into all of that. And then we pull it back out. All right. It was a lot. I know. It's a lot. But in the end, this is extremely useful. Alrighty then, Cyber Warriors, what did we cover today? We covered 3 different ways in order to collect information about installed programs on your Windows system. The better way, weirdly enough, is the way that we generally try to steer away from, which is diving into the registry. There's a lot of stuff there. And it's easy to kind of make mistakes in there, and it gets pretty verbose, and we had to actually write a script in order to do it. It works very quickly, but the script takes quite a while to actually write and troubleshoot. And I didn't do any troubleshooting in this one. And I'll tell you what happened when I took a look at it shortly afterwards. Did you see my typo? Install location? LocalMachine? Install LocalMachine. That's what it is. I spelled it right here. Spelled it wrong there. Always double check your work. So let's go ahead and fix that and save it, so that if we wanted to go back in and then pull all of that, in fact, I'll show you that it's a problem right now. So install programs. Hello. I just can't type it all today. Install programs, select caption, and install location. Notice that there's nothing in any of the install locations. And why is that? It's because there is a typo in here, so we have to actually run it again. And there we have the original output. Now let's take a look at the new output. Bad example, because they didn't have any that had an install location for any of these. But I can tell you it would work on a regular system. Anyway, always double check your code, guys, because you never know when you're going to make little mistakes like that. Go back, double check everything you're doing. Always check, make sure that your code functions and works, especially if you're going to use it in the real world or you're going to use it in the competition. Don't just run it on the fly and hope that it works on the first time go. Never, ever do that. Always test. Always test. All right. I hope you guys learned something. I certainly had fun, and I learned a couple of things in this one too. And as per always, I'll see you in the next video.